Hey everybody, Rosematter here. Welcome to part 18 of my Chaos Head Noah Let's Play. The last episode, more wild revelations, learning before about Rimi being a gigalomaniac, although we knew that, right, based on like the very beginning of this game where we saw Rimi with the swords fighting Senna. We could see why Senna is so upset with Takumi because he changed everything for the worse by discovering that IR2 formula. We learned a little bit more about her backstory with her father. He worked for the Nozomi group and put Senna's mother through a simulation involving her sister. The baby died during the experiment, and then the mother went insane, killed herself. So the father is like basically living in shame on the streets. This was the guy that Kozoe talked to, who told her about the boy and the, whose eyes are those eyes. So he knows about Takumi because he worked for the Nozomi group. Also, speaking of Takumi, apparently he isn't real. He is a delusion that shouldn't exist. The real Takumi is in a hidden away room in or is it called the hospital? So I'm wondering, actually, now that I think about it, is Shogun actually, because Shogun and Rimi were talking in like a hospital room, is Shogun actually Takumi? And then Takumi's talking to this Takumi about how, like, you have the power to be able to, like, save the world. You have to unlock your abilities. Because how else would Shogun know about Takumi? Why would he want him to release his powers? Now it's like, holy cow, that just, like, came to me. I was like, what if Shogun is actually the real Takumi? And then this one that we're controlling, he's a delusion. Apparently he's only, like, 15 months old. Rimi only met him last month. At the scene of the crucifixion, which explains like why he has no memories of her. All of his memories are apparently fake. His house doesn't exist anymore. Nanami has been kidnapped, and Rimi says like she's gonna go save Nanami. Just a whole lot. So now Takumi has to deal with like the crisis of like he doesn't exist technically. So a lot to take in from the last episode. We are in chapter 9 now, I believe, so we will be wrapping up this playthrough soon, and then I have to, get all the other endings, which will take a while. But yeah, very interesting, and I'm excited to see where the story goes from here, so let's get back into it.
これが新作？またへんてこね。
Momose smiled as she stared fixedly at the Gero Froggy keychain Bon had just purchased.
でも可愛いじゃない？
そりゃ新作じゃねえよ。先週出たなんだっけ。
Bon glanced over at Yua as if pleading for help.
涙目ゲロカエルンです。
ああ、そう。それ。
ごめんね、ゆあちゃん。こんなむさ苦しいおじさんに付き合わされて大変だったでしょ
いえ。
ひでえな、ももちゃん。こんなダンディーな中年はなかなかいねえぜ。
With Bon's half-joking protest falling on deaf ears, the president of Frisia served Yua some tea. Heaving a deep sigh, Bon sat down on the chair and glanced around the office. The employees of Frisia, who usually worked well into the night, had actually returned home on time today. Each worker's schedule was arranged to tell this exact tale on the whiteboard. Thanks to their departures, despite the sun having only just set, the office was completely silent, as if it were dead of night.
で、ももちゃん、進行のこと調べてくれたかい？
Before riding the train from Shinjuku, Bon had called Momose in advance and asked her to look into Faithworks.
その前に。
Smile still on her face, Momose glanced over at Yua, who was sipping from her teacup.
ゆあちゃん、お茶を飲んだら帰った方がいいわ。
え？
日も暮れたし、ご両親が心配するでしょ。
Yua realized what the intent behind Momose's words were. Whatever the conversation that would soon take place was, it was not meant for Yua's ears.
私のこと心配してくれているんですか？
ええ、そうよ。
Momose nodded with a serious look on her face. Although thankful for her consideration, Yua shook her head definitively in response.
私、帰りません。みやちゃんの死の真相に近づくためなら、何だってするつもりです。
あなたはこれ以上関わるべきじゃないわ。
私もとっくに当事者の一人です。
An imposing, unwavering resolve dwelt within Yua's words. Momose was perplexed at the unexpected opposition.
意外と頑固ね。
ま、ここでのけ者にするのもコクってもんだろ。いざとなったら警察で保護するさ。
Momose was forced to sigh in response to Bond's nonchalant attitude.
バンちゃんにそんな権力があるのかしらね。
ま、こう見えても一応天下の警視庁捜査一課所属だからな。
あら、そう。
Upon pacifying Bond to a suitable degree, Momose stared intently at Yuba.
これから聞くことは絶対に口外しちゃダメよ。これはあなたの命にも関わることだから、それを肝に銘じてね。
はい。
Yua nodded, her expression far stiffer than before. Upon seeing that, Momose sighed once more, then proceeded to take a seat. Momose, hunching her already rotund body forward, operated the mouse connected to her laptop.
で、進行から何が出たんだい？
バンちゃんの予感的中って感じね。
Both Bon and Yua peered at the monitor from behind Momose.
有限会社新興の親会社
Oh,
は
yeah, related to
Nozomi
Nozomi.
Technology.
Yep.
のぞみテクノロジー？
のぞみグループか。こいつは驚きだな。
新興は5年前にのぞみグループに吸収合併されたんだけど、それ以降発売した商品が次々と大ヒットしてるのよ。ゲロカイルンだけじゃないの。中国製バッグとかタイ製のエコバッグとか美脚パンツとかで、この会社は商品の売り出し方が独特なの。いつも週末に新製品を一斉に投入するのよ。
Okay, so it's a whole thing about the weekend, in Shibuya especially, and that's when these things seem to happen the most is on weekends. Weekends. That word stuck out especially to Bon.
G レートとの関係は？
The GE rate as well.
必然にしろ偶然にしろ、新興の商品がヒットしているのは G レートの変動の影響ね。それは確かよ。
I don't know if it has any connection, but there's also the whole thing with like the people getting those signals by their phone, and the Garo Froggies are used as like little key charms. So I don't know, maybe the Garo Froggy itself is connected to it. It's like, I don't know. I don't understand how this little frog might be potentially behind all of this.
前に見せた G レートのグラフ覚えてる？ 5 年ぐらい前からずっと毎週末に値が上がってるって言ったわよね。新興がのぞみグループに合併された時期とぴったり一致するわ。
進行がレートを操作してると思うか？
新興自体はそんなに大きな会社じゃないから、それは無理よ。
となると親会社。のぞみが怪しいな。グループ総出で取り組めばレート操作だってできそうじゃねえか。
待って、のぞみの方はもちろんだけど、新興が興味深いのはそこだけじゃないの。設立当初の資料にまで遡ってみたら、すごい大物が出てきたのよ。
大物？
井ノ原幸三。
はっは。明和党の重鎮じゃねえの。
新興設立当時はまだ民自党在籍時代だけどね。
つながってきたな。太田教授の時、それとこの前の地震の時、明和党は G レートに関係ありそうな件について報道規制の圧力をかけてきてる。
G レートのグラフのことだけど、いろいろ調べてたら他にも面白いパターンを見つけたわ。
As of now, there were two aspects about the GE rates that Momose had her attention on. First, the fact they consistently rose each and every weekend, The maximum values themselves were not particularly notable, but aside from New Year's, Golden Week, and the Bond Festival, they always went up without fail. And second, the drastic rise following earthquakes. For both the quake 2 months ago, in which there were 8 fatalities, and the quake 1 week ago, in which there were more than 100 fatalities, GE rate had shown an extreme upsurge for a short period of time. Didn't they say, like, Nozomi is planning another earthquake that might, like, have thousands of people die?
で、3つ目のパターン。この5年で4回だけ起きてるわ。時期はどれもまちまち。上昇値は地震の時ほどじゃないけど、結構高いの。最初はこれが何を意味してるのかわからなかったんだけど、調べていくうちにこの5年で4回と符合するイベントに行き着いた。
イベント。
もったいぶらずに教えろよ。
選挙よ。衆参合わせて4度行われた選挙日と、その4回の GE レート上昇の日は完全に同じだったわ。
This would be like all of the like, people talk about political stuff. It's like people talking about like, oh, the government can control the weather, and things like that. It's like it if it were true. It's like all of the conspiracy theories about like political and like political parties and companies being able to do insane things, but it's real. Bond stroked his unshaven chin with a stern look on his face.
野党だった明和党が大躍進を遂げて与党になった選挙は
4年前ですね。
そして井ノ原幸三が民自党を電撃的に離党して明和党に移ったのは5年前。
I guess that's that blonde-haired guy that keeps showing up with the Nozomi group. A heavy silence hung in the air around the three of them.
なんだか私、お話を聞いていたら怖くなってきました。
Yua's voice trembled slightly as she murmured.
私もびっくりだわ。ここまでキーワードがぴったり当てはまるなんてね。
まだ状況証拠でしかないがな。それでも GE レートのことを知っていたからこそ気づけたわけだ。知らなかったらさっぱりだったろ。
As he said that, Bond nonchalantly retrieved his favorite handheld fan and began waving it at himself.
ところで、俺が調べた女子高生の生態について話していいかい？
Momose, bewildered by Bond's sudden change of topic, stared daggers at the detective.
ね、いきなりそんなくだらないこと言い出すんじゃないわよ。ゆあちゃんがいるんだから少しは考えなさい。
ねえ、そういうなって。
A slight smirk colored Bond's face, but his eyes did not match such a sentiment.
青いセナについてだ。正しくは旗のセナと言うべきか。なぜか最近になって母親の旧姓を使い始めたんだよな。その畑野セナの父親、畑野一世は今失踪して行方不明らしいんだが、のぞみテクノロジーの元社員なんだよ。
Oh, maybe they're gonna track him down and be like, we're gonna ask him some questions about the Nozomi group. Or
どういう
her.
こと？
どういうことも何も、そのまんまさ。
Nozomi Technology was a company that primarily developed software for use in medical equipment. The Nozomi Group had begun with Nozomi Technology, but through repeated mergers and acquisitions, it had become one of Japan's top leading conglomerates.
半年前、畑野セナの母親と生後1年の妹が謎の死を遂げている。
Oh wait, that was wow.
父親の失踪はその直後だ。
For some reason, I guess it lines up because, she was what 15 years old when that happened, but it's still crazy to think that that only happened 6 months ago.
畑野セナ本人もそれと前後して当時預けられていたとある施設を脱走するって騒ぎを起こした。
施設ですか？
天神寮っていう非営利の自立更生支援施設だ。表向きはな。
表向きってじゃあ裏があるの？
スポンサーがいるのさ。これが天聖振興会だったりする。
天聖振興会。
Momose grimaced at those words. She then spoke once more, her tone now clearly exasperated.
また面倒な名前が出てきたわね。
ちなみにその天神寮は2年前まで別の名前だった。アークハートメディカル会。
Oh, Arc Heart Medical. That's where. So yeah, they're getting like all these. There was Fess, right? I say. That's where she was staying, right? And that's probably where Nishijo? Is that where he's staying as well? With that whole thing where apparently the real Nishijo is like in some sort of secret hospital room, and this version of him in this world is 15 months old or something like that.
どんな偶然か、今や渋谷の若者のカリスマ的存在であるフェス。岸本綾瀬も
Yep.
ここに入れられていたんだな。畑野瀬名とは入れ違いだったみてえだが。
Oh, and then leaned forward toward Momose and Yua.
でだ。ここからが興味深いんだが。アークハートメディカル会は天神寮と違ってメンタルケア施設だった。精神病患者を治療してたんだ。ところが2年前、アークハートメディカル会は突然非営利団体の自立更生支援施設天神寮へと姿を変えた。それによって精神科医が一斉に解雇されたんだが、その医師たちを丸ごと雇い入れたのが代々木にある AH 東京総合病院だった。
Okay. All right. Right. It's the H Tokyo General Hospital. That's where Takumi is.
ノータリン事件で殺された人が勤めていたのってそこの病院でしたよね。
ああ、高階文夫。確かに AH 東京総合病院の精神科医だ。ついでに言うと、そこの病院長は井ノ原と懇意らしいぜ。
また井ノ原議員ね。
ゆあちゃん、君が追ってた西条匠も、実は AH 東京総合病院をこの1ヶ月で3回訪れてる。
そうなんですか？
警察がずっと尾行してたんでね。確かだ。しかも西条には数年前にその病院に入院した記録まであった。彼の主治医は高階文夫だ。不思議なのは西条の入院記録なんだよな。彼は10歳で入院して約2年後にその記録が途切れてるんだが、退院した記録はなかった。
Dun, dun, dun.
誰かが改ざんしたのかしら。
どうだかな。そこまでは調べが回らなくてね。ああ、それと畑野瀬名に関してもう一つ。最近彼女がよく行動を共にしている折原梢って生徒がいる。1ヶ月ほど前に転校してきた西条のクラスメートなんだが、この子も結構な曰くつきなんだ。折原の父親がのぞみグループの系列会社社員なわけ。
Of course.
元は広島の方に住んでてな。折原梢の同級生3人が何者かに襲われて重傷を負うって事件が起きてる。
I was at like the Nozomi group. I was wondering, I'm like, how did Kozue get away kind of scot-free? She basically just got transferred. I wonder if that was like the Nozomi group just kind of cleaning things up and keeping things under wraps.
3人ともが右腕を鋭利な刃物で切断されて、ひどいありさまだったらしい。折原もその場に居合わせていた。
And there was no like
彼女が
no
犯人じゃねえかって疑いがかかったんだが、
there was no like
凶器が
police
存在
records
しない
about
っ
it.
て
Yeah,
理
she
由で
wasn't
逮
arrested.
捕はされてない。
Right? It's like, oh my gosh. Yeah, it's like that just kind of got swept under the rug. There was no news story about it or anything. Did they like, is it because they're minors? But
それで地元に居づらくなって引っ越したって噂もある。
凶器が存在しない？見つからないじゃなくて？
ああ、存在しないだ。何で切られたのかさえ分かってない。犯行は折原以外には実行できない状況だった。だが、たとえ折原が犯人だとしても、凶器をどこからか取り出すことも、どこかに隠すことも不可能だった。かまいたち現象じゃないかなんて本気で議論されたぐらいだ。
Wait, the Kamatachi phenomenon. Man, they're just throwing more stuff at me.
何もないところから剣を取り出す手品。
Or is that the incident that was in the subway with Senna?
かもしれねえな。
君が悪いです。
Yua, as if trying to stop herself from trembling, hunched down towards her knees, then began to stroke both of her arms with her hands.
何かとても大きな意志が働いているような。
職業柄俺は陰謀論なんざ信じちゃいねえんだが、今回ばかりはその存在を信じそうになるね。明和と、そしてのぞみグループ。G レートに関係してると思われるのはその2つか。
天聖振興会も叩けば埃が出てきそうね。もともとあまりいい噂は聞かないし。
Sipping some of her tea, Momose shrugged her
バン
shoulders.
ちゃんには呆れるわ。本来の仕事をほったらかしにしてこんなことを調べてたなんて。
元はといえば、ももちゃんが G レートのことを教えてくれたのがいけないんだぜ。
そうだけど、それで捜査本部から外されちゃったら世話ないわ。本当に不器用なんだから、あんたって人は。
Those words were neither those of astonishment nor of condemnation, but rather a fairly roundabout way of praising him. Momose, despite her words, acknowledged Bon and his pursuits.
おっと、電話だ。
Bon's cell phone let out an electronic tune. Looking at the display, he saw the caller was a restricted number.
もしもし。
Loud static could be heard from the other end of the call. Bon took the phone away from his ear and looked at the display once more. His connection was good, so it was likely not the issue. It must have been the caller causing the problem. Bon brought his ear close to the phone, believing the call was coming from someplace far away.
おい、誰だ？
No, that sounds like Shogun. This was one of the anonymous threatening phone calls he had been receiving recently. The mechanical sounding voice was likely due to the use of a voice changer. Bon let out an audible laugh before proceeding to answer.
あんたか。いい加減名乗ってくんねえかな。
I just love how, like, nonchalant he is. He just doesn't give a shit.
手を引けって言われて
I mean, he does give a shit, but he just,
そもそも
his life is in
何か
danger
ら
and he's
手
just
を引
like,
きゃいい
oh,
ん
this,
だ。
whatever.
そこを具体的に言ってもらわねえと。
They always hung up there, always after saying back off twice. The pattern the pattern repeated itself so often it was practically routine. No matter how much Bond tried to speak to them, there was never an answer. But on this day, that would finally change.
ああ
Oh, Sua! I was just thinking, I'm like, we haven't seen Sua in a while. And I'm thinking, I'm like, is Sua involved in this somehow? There was the whole thing about how they apparently caught one of the, the murderer. I can't remember which case it was. It was on the TV, and I was thinking, like, oh, is Sua in on this somehow? Like, he's pretending to, capture the murderer so that, like, whatever's going on here can continue on, but it, like, placates the, people for a while because they think, like, oh, the suspect has been apprehended. There won't be any more murders. This could still be a trap. This could be Sua in danger, but he could be working with whoever this is. I don't know why. I keep saying I suspect Sua has something to do with this.
誰だ？
Upon hearing that, Bond finally understood whose distressed voice it was on the other end of the call.
諏訪か？ 誰にやられた？今どこにいる？ 相手は一人なんだな。 おい、大丈夫なのか？
Oh, he's at Age Tokyo Hospital.
諏訪、おい、
No matter how much Bond called out to him, there was no response from the other end of the call. Now, could it just been like Sua could legitimately be in danger, he gave him the information, and then, like, that wasn't supposed to happen, or this is all a trap to, like, lead Bond to the hospital. With a click of his tongue, Bond hung up. Momose and Yua were looking at Bond with intense concern.
スワちゃんに何かあったの？
Bond stood up, then lightly slapped his cheeks twice.
スワが人質に取られた。どうやら AH 東京総合病院にいるみてえだ。
まさか名和と？
ああ、わかんねえが。このままじゃまずい気がする。
応援を頼んだ方がいいわ。
大ごとにしたらそれこそスワの命はねえよ。俺一人で様子を見てくる。
Bond placed his favorite handheld fan on top of the table, close to where Momose's hands rested. Following this, he took a good, long look at each of the girls. His demeanor was like that of an entirely different person's. The unreliable middle-aged detective that he had so often played was nowhere to be seen. All there was now was an intense, fearless expression on his face.
ももちゃんとゆあちゃんもどこかに身を隠せ。わかったな。
I like Bond. He's cool. I like that, like, he has, like, that very nonchalant. It seems like he's just a bumbling detective, but, like, you know that he wouldn't have been in the police force for this long if he wasn't good at his job. Through no will of my own, my legs moved in the direction of my base. They were heavy, so heavy, in fact, I wondered if my heels were packed with lead. Except it wasn't just my legs. My entire body felt heavy. But despite how hard it was to move, I kept telling myself it was proof my body existed, that I wasn't a delusionary existence. The sun had already set, meaning there was no one in the city to pay any attention to me as I staggered through the streets. Before now, I would push everyone away, telling them not to look at me. I was scared of getting too much attention, of being a laughingstock. But even though I'd done it for so long, right now I just wanted someone, anyone, to look at me. I wanted someone to see me with their eyes. I wanted someone to acknowledge that I was here. That was the deus ex machina I needed. But no one did. If I randomly yelled out something, I'd probably get looks of disdain. But I didn't have the willpower to go through with that. Within my sweaty hand was my cell phone, the one I'd gone out to buy with Nanami. I only had 4 numbers registered on it. Rimi's cell phone, Nanami's cell phone, Misumi-kun's cell phone, and the number from my parents' house. I tried desperately to think of a way to prove I wasn't fake with just those 4 phone numbers.
あなたは妄想の存在なんだよ。
No, I wasn't a delusionary existence. I was real. I was Nishijo Takumi. I was 17 years old. I was a second year at Sume Academy. I was in a family of 4. I was...
助けて。僕を証明して。
My teeth were chattering, a clearly audible clacking sound. I wasn't cold whatsoever, and yet I trembled all the same.
助けてよ。
From the 4 numbers I had, I chose Misumi-kun's.
はい。
はミス。
ダークだろ。どうしたんだ。リミとうまいこと言ったか。ちゃんと童貞卒業できたんだろうな。感謝しろよ。気を使って2人にしてやったんだからよ。
Misumi-kun was the same as ever. That at least brought me some relief. He did know me. He recognized me as Nishijo Takumi. So I wasn't a delusionary existence. Rimi had just been lying. I knew it.
そういえば、ついさっき美奈子から言われたんだけどよ。
え美奈子。
ああ、俺の女。で、美奈子が言うんだよ。ここ1ヶ月ぐらい、日常と急に仲良くなったけど、なんでって。
Right? True.
こいつ何
Yeah,
言ってんだって
okay.
最初は思ったんだけど、
Oh.
そもそも俺、普通だったら
Yeah,
お前
right?
みたいなやつと
Exactly.
絶対関わろうとしねえんだよな。リミを通して知り合ったってのはなんとなく記憶にあるんだけどよ。細かいことはなぜか思い出せねえんだよな。
Right? And she said, like, she only started hanging out with me about a month ago, so it was only when Rimi came into the picture. It was the same. It was the same situation I'd experienced earlier. Stop it. I don't want this. Don't say anything else, please. Also, what a weird thing to bring up and be like, hey, something weird that happened. Why am I friends with you, actually? You could have just talked about girls like you always do. So why, today of all days, did you have to?
お前さ、いつ俺とダチになったんだっけ？
I got too freaked out, so I instantly hung up. I felt like I was about to cry, yet no tears came. It simply felt like my heart was being torn to shreds. Next, I decided to try calling home. Despite how hard my fingers were trembling, I somehow managed to select the number and press the call button. Nanami had registered this one. I hadn't put it in myself, so there was no doubt the call would go through. Considering what time it was, would my dad be home? Had my mom left already? Was Nanami there? Even if it did connect, what would I even say? Hey, I'm your son, right? They would probably think I was screwing with them, that I was being stupid. And in truth, it was a stupid question. What if they said no? What if they said, our son Takumi is eating dinner with his sister in the living room? What if the phone call that was supposed to prove I was real actually did the exact opposite? What if they asked, who are you? As the negative thoughts continued to swell in my mind, I grew more and more afraid. I didn't want to know the outcome. I was really scared, and I couldn't control it. I felt like I was about to go insane. My breathing grew ragged. I could barely breathe anymore. Right then, the call connected. With the phone next to my ear, I prepared myself. It would be like, this phone is not in service or something.
あなたがおかけになった電話番号は
yeah.
現在使われておりません。番号をご確認の上、もう一度おかけ直しください。
No one would prove I was me. There was no one that could. I wanted to die. Raising my head, I noticed Yamanote Dori in front of me, with lots of cars coming and going. Is he just gonna be like, I'm gonna get hit by a car, that will prove that I'm a real person? Oh shit. Oh shit, okay. I wonder if the negative thing is if I just like jump out in the road. Maybe it was for the best that I died. There was no value in a fake being alive. I was worthless. We're gonna choose the positive option. Rimi herself said no more delusions. Should I just go with neutral then? Should I just choose not to have a delusion? That might be the best thing to do. But I think in this one, I should check my walkthrough to see if I should be having delusions. But like with the first playthrough, it doesn't really matter except for very certain situations on what I choose. But everything else, I can basically pick whatever I want. But I should just double check to make sure that I do the right thing here. All right, so it looks like I'm fine, but I'm going to try and choose the positive one. Even if a monster did try and live in this world, they just end up being persecuted. I had neither hopes nor dreams. My existence itself was repulsive to people. I wanted to be freed from all of this. If I died, I'd be free. After all, there'd be no more need to think. There'd be nothing more to suffer from. There'd be no one to laugh at me. There'd be no one to betray me. I wanted nothingness. With my own 2 feet, I took a single step forward. Or at least, I intended to. But my legs didn't move an inch. They wouldn't do it for me. And before I realized, my knees had started trembling. Maybe this would have happened no matter what I'd picked. I couldn't gather the courage. Despite how much I wanted to die, the fear of death wouldn't allow me to take even a single step forward. I wanted to die, and yet I also feared death. I didn't understand. I couldn't grasp my own feelings anymore. Did I want to live or die? Which was it? I clenched my teeth, closed my eyes, and repeated to myself, I want to die. But just as I feared, my legs wouldn't move. Seeing the steel cars pass by so quickly, the thought of getting run over by one of those high-speed weapons came to mind, and my body froze completely. In the end, I sank to the ground. At what should have been the end of it all, I finally got to know how much of a pussy I was, how much of a spoiled brat I was. I ended up thinking about what would be most convenient for me. If I can't move from here, what if a car skids on the road and runs into me on the sidewalk? How nice it would be if some act of God like that had me die. As Sakihata Rimi walked beneath the Shibuya station underpass, she took out her cell phone. She had walked straight here right after parting ways with Takumi. She then selected the number registered in her address book as Nana-chan and placed a call. They picked up the very next moment.
私
Okay.
実はちょっとした報告があり
What?
ます
Because she was saying about how, like, Nanami was kidnapped, and she was like, I'm on my way to go save her, so she's fine. They're working together.
ナ
What?
ナちゃんを
Okay.
これから助けに行こうと思って
Okay, so Nana is in trouble. Rimi had an idea of where Nanami was being held, as well as who has abducted her, a theory she'd only come to because she had been in a similar situation herself once before. It was a past she wanted to forget, but it was one she was ready to confront in order to rescue Nanami. No matter how steeped in darkness those memories may be. The reaction of whom she had called was exactly as Rimi had predicted, leading her to inevitably start laughing.
私って信用されてないな平気だってば
Both her voice and expression were cheerful. Not an ounce of the grim resolve she carried could be felt. To an outside observer, it would simply look as if she was having a fun, engaging conversation.
昔の話だしねそもそも私の感情とナナちゃんを助けることとどっちを優先させるかなんて決まりきってることだよ言ったでしょ私はあなたの力になりたいってそれにタクには関わらせたくないの
As she said that, Rimi's expression clouded over.
ちょっとだけ語っちゃっていいかなタクにねいろいろひどいこと言っちゃったんだしかもそんなことしておいてすごく自分勝手なんだけど私彼と一緒に過ごした時間はとっても楽しかったって思っちゃってるんだ何もかもが妄想でまみれたまやかしでしかなかったのに学生生活もあの学校に私やタクが通ってることも大臣と友達だっていうことも私がタクと一緒にいようとしたこともタクの存在そのものも
Little by little, Rimi's pace slowed. Multiple strangers passed her by.
タクってどうしようもないくらい情けなくてどうしようもないくらい弱くてきっと普通の女だったら見向きもしないような男の子なんだよ
As she spoke, she squeezed the hand she held the cell phone with.
なのに私の心には楽しかったっていう気持ちがあるのなのに私の心にはもっと一緒にいたかったっていう気持ちがあるのこの気持ちって何なのかな
Looking up, she saw the neon-lit night sky. No stars were in sight. For an ephemeral moment, Rimi stood beneath it. She keeps talking about the sky. A slight smile rose to her face when she received a response.
さてとそろそろ切るね本当に大丈夫だってあなたは何も心配しないで私が全部決着をつけてくるからねたくみ
I knew it. I was like, she's probably talking. Because the way that she was saying about how, at the beginning, like, when you're talking about, like, Nanami, I was like, well, who else would, like, care about Nanami that she knows except for the OG Takumi? Having lost all of my willpower, before I realized it, I found myself back in my base. I didn't know how I'd gotten here after failing to die at Yamamote Dori. My memory was hazy.
このコンテナって 誰が
It's
どう
like
や
someone
ってここ
literally,
まで運んだんだろう
like someone gave him this container with everything that he wants and just be like, you just stay in here, shut yourself away. They don't want him to know the truth about stuff. They just wanted him to like live his life in that container. It was something I'd never even thought about until now, but now that I couldn't help but notice how odd it felt. The more I thought about it, the more the feeling encroached upon my mind. The moment I closed the door, the room went pitch black. Leaning against the door, I simply stood there still as could be. And then as soon as Rimi showed up, it's like it opened up his world and he started to actually go out and, you know, get to know other people and start to question things. Inside the quiet room, except Rimi was the one who's saying that she wanted to keep him away from knowing all these things, but by him hanging out with her, he started to like want to go to school and want to be out more. Inside the quiet room, all that could be heard was the sound of my shallow breathing and the hum of the fan inside my PC. I thought maybe surrounding myself in darkness would make things easier, since I wouldn't have to be conscious of my pitiful self. But it had the exact opposite effect. Unable to see anything and with nothing else to listen to, Rimi's cruel words from before repeated endlessly in my mind.
あなたは妄想の存在なんだよ。
My own moans disgusted me more than ever before. I even felt nauseous. I was already a disgusting freak even before all this. But if my very existence itself was warped, I was already beyond saving. I wanted to disappear completely. As I tripped over the trash scattered across the floor, I stumbled my way to the end of the room. I turned the lights on, scaring away the darkness. I then grabbed the Seroton figure post-awakening version that had just so happened to enter my line of sight, and sat down in my chair. I brought her close to my chest. She was really small, and she was really hard, too. She didn't breathe, nor did she speak. She didn't have the warmth that a 3D girl had. Alright, well, I went positive last time, so we gotta go negative this time. Despite that, she was all I had left. Rimi had left me. I didn't know where Nanami was. Sana had attacked me. Kozupi hadn't protected me. Yua was my enemy. And Ayase was hospitalized. These were the only girls I knew the names of, and none of them would do anything for me. Reality was harsh. It didn't give a damn about a monster like me. What if my negative delusion was like Seroton being like, you're a stupid piece of shit? Be like the one girl that he's like, I can fall back to her and she'll always love me, just like insults him too. With my trembling hands, I tightened my grip on Seroton, and tighter, tight enough to break her. I wanted to disappear completely.
だったら消えればいいっしょ。
ああ、消えてやんよ。消えてやる。
I opened the storage box under my bed. If I remembered correctly, there should have been a knife around there. Oh shit. Thinking back on it now, it was just a bunch of chuny nonsense, but there was a time when I thought walking around with a knife in my pocket was cool. Though I'd stopped after police supervision got a lot tighter. And, just as I thought, among my keychains, trading cards, and scratch paper was my pocket knife. I held the blade in my hand. It shone eerily as it reflected the light. It was a bit rusty given it had been left there for about a year. But this amount of rust didn't matter much if I was just slitting my wrists. I propped the knife on my left wrist, the same hand holding Seroton. The blade was cold as ice, a chill that made me think of death. I closed my eyes and took 3 deep breaths. All that was left now was to keep a firm grip on the knife and drive it to the side. I just had to apply a bit of pressure with my right hand. My fake heart pounded and pounded. My pulse skyrocketed, even though I was just a fake. It felt as if ice were being poured into the center of my head. The trembling refused to stop. It only got worse and worse with each passing second, even though I was just a fake. Slit it. Slit your wrist. If you do so, you can disappear. I raised my voice in an attempt to muster up the will to die. Slit it, 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 slit it. Oh, that's hard to say. Over and over again. My trembling had gotten so bad, I dropped the Seraton figure I was holding. The knife was still pressed against my wrist. The hand holding it was shaking like crazy.
ダメだ。できない。できないよ。
Throwing away the knife, I leaned back in my chair and cradled my head in my hands. How pathetic. I didn't even have the courage to kill myself. No reason to live, yet unable to die. I couldn't even put an end to my life, the life of a monster. I was a worthless piece of shit who was beyond saving. It wasn't that I wanted to live. I was just scared of dying, of disappearing for good. Even though I was just a fake.
頼むよ。誰かこんな僕を殺してくれ。
At the end of the day, I resorted to hoping someone else would be kind enough to kill me. It's like he's gone from somebody save me to somebody kill me. Either way, he wants somebody to like come and do it for him rather than him, doing things himself. I couldn't do anything on my own. This nature of mine to be completely dependent on others, it made me rotten to my very core.
そんなタッキーも可愛いよ。
Seraton spoke cheerfully, and I was hit with a strong sense of disgust toward myself who had made her do so. I'm such a fucking disgrace. So much for not having delusions. Human presence quickly faded from the hospital cloaked in night. Perhaps after taking in all the life and death during the day, it took this time to regain balance. At this time, the hospital housed neither the scent of life nor the scent of death. Only a quiet emptiness reigned. Bon Usagi chuckled to himself as he realized the odd nature of his thoughts. Despite the minor self-flagellation, it did indeed feel especially quiet tonight. It was not yet time for the lights to be on, leaving the corridor steeped in darkness. There was not even a single sign of any nurses. Immediately after stepping foot into the lobby, Bon was hit with a very bad feeling. There was no logical reasoning behind it. It was simply what one might call a detective's gut. My gut is usually right for the most part. In his mind, he believed it to be an oddly superstitious thought, but this may have simply been a way to dismiss the feeling. While the taxi had driven him to the hospital, Bon had attempted to call Sua's phone numerous times, but each and every one of them had failed, which only served to demonstrate his junior's precarious situation all the more clearly. There was no time to waste. He had to find the place where Sua was being held within the large hospital and rescue him, all while not being detected by the kidnapper. The linoleum floor would have made his footsteps echo. To avoid this, Bon took off his shoes before entering the lobby. Winter was swiftly approaching at this time of year, a fact Bon was readily made aware of when the chill from the floor sent shivers up his soles. The sound of the automatic front door echoed throughout the room, followed by the voice of a girl calling out Bon's name. That's not creepy at all? Okay, I thought maybe it was like someone else. The surprise of seeing her in the lobby put Bon at a loss for words. He hurried toward her in a panic. Beyond her glasses, her eyes threw anxious glances at her surroundings.
おい、なんでついてきたんだ。身を隠せって言っただろうね。
すみません。でも、私。
Bon looked for any sign of Momose, but she was nowhere to be seen. Realizing she'd come alone, Bon scratched the top of his head with a concerned expression.
今すぐ戻れ。これは遊びじゃねえんだぞ。
それは、分かっているつもりです。
分かってるなら帰るんだ。
Oh, Shogun. Right as he spoke, a creaking sound came from the hallway across the lobby. In the very center of this empty, dark hallway, slowly an empty wheelchair made its way toward Bon and Yua. I was saying about how I think that Takumi may be Shogun. And like I know that Takumi, he's been seemingly seems to have been in this room for like basically since he was admitted a while ago. But I don't know if it's just like they did horrible things to him, but what would turn him into like a shriveled up little child that looks like an old man? Like they must have really effed him up if that's actually him. Then at nearly the same exact time, someone could be heard running up the stairs.
とにかくユアちゃんは帰れ。いいな。
Before he had even finished giving his warning, Bon had already started running. He followed the footsteps up the stairs without waiting for Yua's answer. Given his typical languid demeanor, the speed at which Bond moved was like nothing anyone could have ever imagined. As he followed the footsteps, Bond found himself on the roof of the outpatient ward. There were lines of shrubbery installed on the rooftop, forming a garden of sorts. It was most likely a space of healing for the patients there, but regrettably, as the lights were off, Bond could not see what kind of flowers were blooming. Given the fact Bond was on the roof, it was only natural the wind would blow strong. With ragged breaths, Bond quickly surveyed his surroundings. Without a shadow of a doubt, this was where the man behind the footsteps must have run. But now he was nowhere to be seen. Was I led here on purpose? The man had fled while causing sounds that had seemed purposeful. Bond could not think of any other reason for him to have done that, aside from leading him here. Bond did not have his gun on him. As he was apprehensive about being unarmed, he looked for something that could serve as a weapon, but to no avail. With a gulp, he wiped away the sweat on his forehead with his fingers. Step by step, he made his way to the center of the garden. Here and there, Bond could see a few hiding spots tucked within the shadows of the benches and shrubbery. He put himself into a fully alert state, one in which he could respond to a potential attacker no matter the direction they came from. The garden was set up in a circular fashion, with benches placed around it in accordance with its shape. Bond strained his eyes as he looked at each bench in order, and on one of those benches his eyes laid upon a strange object. Keeping a close look on his surroundings, he slowly approached the bench, and as he got closer to it, its shape was made clear to him. Ah, the mask. It was around the size of a soccer ball, round and dark. It was a severed human head. Bond, who had investigated countless murder cases involving dismemberment in the past, quickly recalled an image of a photo he had once seen. The bad feeling in his chest grew stronger and stronger. What if it was Sua behind it all? He was oh man, he was even saying like he has his ringtone is like what do they call him, Darth Spider or something like that? Like what if he was like, haha, I am the one behind everything? What if he was this serial killer all along? And then he joins the police force to like, I don't know, keep them off the trail of the true murderer? And I was saying before about how like they captured the killer, but like what if that was just a misdirect? Recognizing the possibility of it being his junior's head, vengeful anger and furious rage toward the perpetrator bubbled up from within. Like, this could be Sua, like, knowing that they're, like, Bond's getting too close to the truth. Like, he staged this all pretending to be in danger. Bond gritted his teeth and drew even closer to the bench. The object did not move a single inch. The wind of the night continued to blow. Then Bond heard a gunshot. Who would have a gun? A cop. He froze in response to the sudden sound. Normally, the detective would duck and investigate the direction the sound had come from, but he was unable to do even that, right? Because guns are they're hard to come by in Japan, apparently. So I'm like, could be Sua. No, in actuality, there was no need for him to do that anymore. Feeling a burning heat in his chest, Bond touched it with his hand. A slippery sensation. Something was flowing out from his body. He better not die right here. I'm going to be very upset. I like Bond, accompanied by the very particular smell of blood. Only a short moment following the gunshot did Bond's mind begin to register pain within him. He had been shot. The moment he realized this, all strength left his legs. Unable to remain standing, he collapsed to the ground. It is Sua, goddammit. I freaking called it. I knew it. He was too nice. He seemed too sweet, too innocent. The footsteps from earlier were approaching him. As his vision grew blurry, he desperately looked up at the person drawing near. A dark shadow with a gun in its hand. A shadow so dark Bond could not recognize its face. This is why I'm suspicious of people like this, because sometimes I'm right, damn it. The clues were there. The Darth Spider costume, him saying he's a big fan. Yeah. Fucking called it. A voice came. A voice he recognized. Bond collapsed in a heap, was met with the ridicule of one man, Sua Mamoru. Hopefully Yua will come from behind and like hit Sua on the back of the head with something. As he laughed into the night, Suwa casually picked up the object from the
ち
bench.
なみに先輩、やけにこれに注目してたっすけど、そんなに珍しかったんすか？
So was Suwa also behind the whole thing at the O Tower? Like we saw Shogun there, but then there was also the Darth spider costume. Somebody was there.
ダーススパイダーのヘルメット。
Suwa, who had now returned to Bon, held the dark helmet in front of the detective's face in an ostentatious manner. God, he looks so creepy.
ざまねえ。
As Bon laughed, his vision grew blurry and blurrier. Both his arms and legs felt extremely cold. His chest hurt, but not just from the physical pain. He also felt an intense gaze upon him, but he had no more strength to conclude whether it was Sua's or someone else. Knowing that his life would last only a few more minutes, Bon forced his growingly heavy body to face upward. With arms and legs outstretched, only the night sky lay above them. A sky overcast with no stars to be seen. But even if there were any left in the sky, Bon had long since lost the ability to see them. God, this sucks. He's gonna die in a hospital. I wouldn't say that's ironic, but after a few coughs, the taste of blood spread through his mouth.
そう。
Maybe a little bit like he dies at a hospital, but nobody's there to save him.
お前はバカだ。まだガキでどうしようもないくらいのバカなデカだ。だが俺はお前のこと結構勝手だ。
I doubted him. I doubted him many times.
自分は先輩が鬱陶しくてしょうがなかったっすよ。
まあ気持ちはわかる。
Bon's breathing grew increasingly shallow. Only a faint wheezing sound could be heard leaking from his throat. Before long, he'd be unable to perceive anything anymore.
何者なんだお前。
With his consciousness fading in and out, Bon spoke one final question, and in response, Suwa pointed the muzzle at Bon and gave his reply.
魔法使いっす。
A wizard.
バカが。
Well, hopefully, Yua will either be able to take Suwa out, I doubt that, or hopefully she's not going to follow and then just get shot as well. Before either of them could realize it, the wind had stopped blowing. The darkness had quickly turned to a place of serenity. And within it, two figures remained frozen still. But that too remained only for an ephemeral moment. Sua's finger, now curled around the trigger, slowly moved inward.
先輩に信仰の救いあれ。
Well, so much for that. Well, maybe in the other endings, we can maybe save Bon. This is like the bad end, right? This is like the initial end where everything goes wrong and then we have to try and somehow get the good end. Yeah, he's lost. He has lost it. I don't blame him. Why? Or WH? After all this time, only now you've become Chuni? Or were you rejected by an in real life girl? In that case, I've got some good news for you. Is this gonna be just the rest of the game? You stay a virgin till 30. Like, who is Grimm? I want to know who Grimm is. I'm guessing it's someone that he's interacted with in the real world. You become a wizard. Oh shit, is Suwa also grim? I don't know if I've said that that could be a potential option, but like obviously he's working for the Nozomi group or for this like whole thing of like the light, the Church of Light or whatever, and maybe they've been keeping an eye on Takumi. That's a pro tip. Speaking of pro tips, I love just Grim is just completely ignoring him. Apparently, there's going to be a festival in about an hour. It'll be at Shibuya's Scramble Crossing. Jesus, you're annoying. WTF, LOL. Well, if that's what you want, you should go. You're a celebrity, so you'll be the center of attention. Oh yeah, that's right. Forgot about that. The fact that people know who he is. Maybe you can get someone there to kill you. Oh goddamn, is that how it's gonna end? He's gonna go and be like, somebody kill me, please. Turning off my PC monitor, I hugged my knees with my arms.
僕を殺してよ。誰か。
鬼ってば。
Oh, Nanami. In my hand was Seraton, my one and only ally. Ugh, if that's her.
おーい、開けろ。
Perhaps because I'd been holding her in my sweaty hands for a while, her slender limbs were sticky, and not only that, but her arms had been bent.
ほら、開けろ。
Okay, we're definitely going to be positive here. I'm curious. That voice. It couldn't be. How? There was no way I'd misheard it. Out of every girl that visited my base, there was only one dumbass that would scream outside of it like that. Nanami was here. I was somewhat surprised at how indifferent I felt in response to that fact. I just didn't care. What would her coming here while I was this far gone even do for me? Besides, it wasn't like it was out of the ordinary for Nanami to come here. Hadn't Rimi said she was going to rescue her anyway?
開けないとひどいんだからね。
The noise was starting to irritate me. Just leave a monster like me alone. Nanami should have been focused on her right hand, not me. Not that I knew what had happened to it. I didn't have it in me to talk to anyone anymore.
鬼。
But she was being too loud, so I was forced to get up from my chair and head for the door. The door seemed oh so far away to me, which made me realize I was scared to see her.
あ、やっと出てきた。
I wonder if her hand... Oh, I still see the bandage, it looks like.
生存確認。
As I opened the door, Nanami smiled and waved at me. I froze in place. She was acting way too normal. She was acting way too energetic. I'd seen it, a white bandage wrapped around her right wrist. So why? I then remembered the phone call I'd gotten a few hours earlier. The pained voice asking me to give her right hand back. And now the smile she had right now, and the bandage around her right wrist, contradicted each other. Nanami was contradicting herself. Oh, I see. She was also a delusion. She had to be. I'd never had a little sister named Nanami to begin with. I got it now. That had to be it. After ignoring her and heading back into my room, I sat down on the sofa. I once again took hold of my Seraton figure and gripped her tight. So tight, in fact, that my hand hurt slightly. But it didn't matter because that pain, too, was a delusion.
鬼、どうしたの？元気ないじゃん。
Everything in this world was made of delusions. Delusions developed only within my mind. Both me and this delusion I was looking at were fake.
徹夜でゲームでもやってたの？もっと人間らしい生活したら？え、 なになに？
黙れ。
ちょっと、そんな言い方しなくてもいいじゃん。お兄だからって何言っても許されるとか思ってる？
黙れよ。もうそう妹が。
妄想？
I surrendered my body to the sofa and looked up at the ceiling. With no particular goal in mind, I started counting the rusty spots. I didn't want to look at Nanami. I'd only feel empty if I did. Well, not that I cared about whether I felt empty or not, given I was just a delusionary existence.
ねえお兄、本当に平気？いつもと全然様子が違うけど。
Worrying about me like a good little sister, huh? My delusional sister was worried about me. That fact alone filled me with anger. Besides, who is she to have come in my room like she owned the place?
あ、わかった。お腹空いたんでしょう。
I gritted my teeth.
だったら、ナナが何か作ろうか？
どれ？
鳥って言った？鶏肉？
No one said a thing about takeout.
鶏肉だと、やっぱ唐揚げかな。でも、一人で作ったことないし。あ、別に、お兄のリクエストがあったから作るわけじゃないからね。ナナも今日は鶏肉で何か作りたいなって思ってただけだよ。
This Nanami was really annoying. The fact she was so similar to the real one wasn't something I could ignore. Wait, did a real Nanami even exist in the first place? And what was this Nanami? Real? The real Nanami? My head became a mess. So I stopped thinking. I didn't care anymore. At the end of the day, everything was a delusion.
包帯取れ。取ってみろ、ボケが。
包帯って、あ、これ？転んで打撲しただけだし。
Just a fall? Was it true, or was she lying? I would know if she took it off.
ほんと、わがままなお兄だな。じゃあ約束してよ。ナナが包帯取ってみせたら、お兄も元気出すって。
The sound of rustling cloth rang throughout the quiet room, followed by a ringing in my ears. My head hurt. These two were delusions, though, so I paid them no mind.
はい、これで満足？って、ちょっとお兄、わざわざ取ったんだから、ちゃんと見てよ。
I sluggishly lowered my gaze. Nanami had rolled up her uniform sleeve, and she was now sticking her right hand out toward me. And when I looked at her slender arm, I saw... Sounds like dripping blood? Oh, whose eyes are those eyes? Whoa, okay, I wasn't expecting that. Blood, dripping blood. Bloody words had been cut into her arm, and they said...
その目、誰の目？
And that was the good delusion. My vision flashed, and when it passed, just like that, the horrifying wound on her arm was gone. I'd been hyperventilating, so I moved to catch my breath. I forcibly bit my lip. Nanami was rubbing the arm she had taken the bandage off of.
青あざ、だいぶ消えてくれたな。最初はすごく腫れてたんだよ。
I didn't know whether that was the truth or not. Sure, there wasn't a wound there, but there had been before. I didn't understand anything anymore. I didn't want to think anymore. I once again laid my head on the sofa.
ねえ、ナナミ。
Without meeting her eyes, I called out to my sister, or to the girl whose identity I wasn't sure of.
お前が本物でも偽物でもどっちでもいいよ。
Right now, I only wanted one thing.
僕を殺してくれないか。
At the front entrance to AH Tokyo General Hospital, Kusunoki Yua fixed her gaze beyond the automatic door. Having been told by Bond to get out of here now, she had reluctantly complied and went outside. However, in her worry, she couldn't bring herself to go any further. Bond had followed the mysterious figure and vanished up the hospital stairs. It had not even been 3 minutes since then, but hoping that Bond had already returned, Yua peeked into the lobby. This was after Bond had headed into the hospital alone. Yua had ignored Momose's orders and had followed after him so she could get one step closer to the truth behind her little sister's death, and the true perpetrator. The person that had told Bond to back off over the phone and had abducted Bonds Jr., someone who must have been named Suisan, was most likely the same one that had killed her sister, Mia. That was the feeling Yua had, and as such, she had been unable to hold back her impulsive emotions. Despite Bond's various warnings about the dangers of involving herself with this case, Yua had come nonetheless. Moreover, it was not as though Yua would be able to achieve anything by coming here. She was nothing more than a powerless high schooler after all. Somewhere in her mind, Yua hoped that Bond would simply come running gallantly back after apprehending the culprit. If that happened, she would have the opportunity to question them directly. Why did my sister have to die? That was the one thing Yua had to ask. Suddenly, Yua felt a gaze upon her. She nervously scanned her surroundings. It had not even been 2 hours since the sun had set. Yet, oddly enough, the hospital's front entrance was eerily quiet. Right next to it was the urgent care entrance, which also served as the entrance for emergencies. Yeah, that's weird, the fact that there was nobody there, like there's nobody at a hospital. And yet, not even there housed any signs of human presence. A train gently ran along its tracks beside the hospital. Hardly any cars passed by the large street in front of it, and there was nary a single passerby. Housed between the sleepless cities of Shibuya and Shinjuku, where Yua was now was akin to an abyss of darkness formed in the interstice of two bursts of blinding light. No figure that could conceivably be responsible for the gaze was visible. Holding back her anxiety, Yua placed her hand over her chest and let out a small sigh. Following this, she found herself glancing over at the hospital ward. Wait, what? There's Mia? I'm assuming that's Mia. There, at the entrance to the hospital ward, stood a single girl. First I thought it was Yua, but then I forgot that they were twins. The lights were out, rendering the area very dimly lit, and yet the girl's figure was clearly visible amid the darkness.
Mia-chan.
Without intending to, Yua whispered that name. Her sense of reason told her it was impossible, but nonetheless she could not keep those words from escaping. The girl was a mirror image of her, a mirror image of her twin sister that was no longer of this world. Moreover, Yua recognized the clothes she was wearing. She knew almost for a fact that they were her sister's clothes. The possibility of her perhaps being a ghost filled Yua with fear that made her hair stand on end. Suddenly, the girl turned and headed for the automatic door marking the entrance to the hospital ward. The moment she grew close enough, the door quietly slid open. It isn't a ghost. Yua was in shock, but before she could register anything more, she promptly ran after the girl. I bet that that's Nozomi somehow, creating an illusion or delusion that would get Yua into the hospital so they could take her out too, since she knows too much. Inside, perhaps due to it being past closing time, it was even quieter than outside. Each time Yua took a step forward, her footsteps echoed forth into the depths of the corridor. It had been just the same in the outpatient ward, but the fact that it was even quieter here made her very uneasy. The girl had disappeared up the stairs. Yua heard the faint sound of laughter coming from ahead. Yep, laughter in an empty hospital. That's not scary at all. It's like a scene straight from a ghost story. With that on her mind, Yua cautiously made her way up the stairs step by step. She arrived on the second floor. Glancing around the corridor, she did not see anyone. Something she had expected. But, just as she was suspecting, it may have been a mere illusion. A girl's laughter sounded from the floor above. That voice and the sound of its laughter were identical to what Yua had heard time and time in the past. Climbing to the third floor and looking down the corridor, Yua saw a girl with the same face as her standing there. One of the victims of the first NewGen case, the group dive, her little sister who should have died 2 months ago. Kusunoki Mia was stood right there with an unmistakable sense of presence.
So.
Yua removed her glasses and rubbed her eyes. However, even after putting her glasses back on, she looked to see that Mia was still there.
Mia-chan, なの? どう思う?
A voice so clear it could never be an illusion. And that intrepid smile on her face. That laughter in the air. It was exactly the same as Yua remembered from her sister. Mia had always acted the very same way. In order for her to be the wrongdoer in the eyes of others, she had laughed like that all the time.
Mia-chan. 本当に私がミアで あなたがユア
Oh shit, what if
だ
you're
と思う
Mia? She's like, what if I'm Yua, you're Mia?
どういうこと
Whenever you got twins situations in these types of games, you can always expect some fuckery to be going on.
もし逆だったらあなたはミア死んだのはユア殺したのはあなた
What? Okay.
何を言っているのあなたは親に愛される姉が疎ましくてネットで殺人を依頼したのよ
What?
しかも自殺に見せかけるように見ず知らずの4人も一緒に飛び降りさせた
Wait, what?
あなたは姉になりすまして妹の死を悲しみ涙を流しているふりをしながらこれまで姉が独占していた親の愛を手に入れて心の中ではほくそ笑んでいる違うわ私はユアよ誰がそれを証明するの私はユアのはずでも確信が持てない私を私だと証明するものって何顔名前記憶自分のことなのに自分で自分を証明するなんて不可能よ私がミアだっていう可能性もあるのあなたはいろいろと調べていたじゃない多重人格
Oh my gosh.
有病
Don't throw this at me. Come on.
記憶捏造それから
I guess, you know, as we're
Awesome.
hurtling towards the end, of course, they're going to be throwing a whole bunch more bullshit at me to deal with. The concepts Yua herself had been looking into prior to now showed just how real the ambiguity of memories, or perhaps recollections, truly was. She didn't know nor understand herself anymore. What was she? Yua cradled her head as she shook it in denial.
あなたは誰
Was she Yua, who had always played the good child and was automatically loved and cherished by her parents? Was she Mia, who had always played the bad child and was actively hated by her parents? The child who, despite her actions being her own, oft cast her sister glares of jealousy and hatred.
さあ私も
Mia, or possibly Yua, guided Yua, or possibly Mia, as she walked down the corridor soundlessly.
私と同じ目に遭いなさい
Yua and Mia, identical twins, faces a mirror image of one another, and the boundary that served to differentiate the two was growing more and more blurred. Two enormous boxes stood tall within the darkness, and yet, compared to the nearby Shinjuku skyscrapers, they were akin to a small child looking up at their parents. The hospital roof, that was where Yua found herself, having been led there by Mia. A section of the towering fence had been torn open just wide enough to allow a person to fit through. Whether this was an intentional effort, none could say. Mia and Yua, after moving through the torn section to the outer side of the fence, both now stood at the edge of the roof. This could be a delusion. She could actually be Yua, and this is just a delusion created by, like, Nozomi to... What, she's gonna feel guilty about what she possibly did and be like, alright, now you're gonna kill yourself to, I don't know, redeem yourself for killing your sister, possibly? Before them, the outpatient ward, as that location was lower than the hospital ward. The entire breadth of the roof garden was visible to them. However, the lights were still turned off, so even if there were people there, Yua would be unable to know. The wind blew strongly on the rooftop. The gale made Yua's and Mia's soft hair flutter along with the hem of their clothes.
私たちはもともと一つだったんだからまた戻るだけ
Maybe she didn't even have a twin sister. Maybe even that's a delusion. Who
一歩を
knows?
踏み出せばあなたは私になる
Yua, her eyes vacant of all light, mechanically whispered those emotionless words. Spreading her arms to maintain her balance, she endured the upward rising wind. Beside her, Mia, arms spread just as Yua's were, looked at her sister and smiled.
耐える必要なんてないよあなたは私の痛みを知らなくちゃならない さあ、飛んで。そうすれば、私もあなたも同じ痛みを共有するわ。私は、どっちなの？私、あなた。それを聞いても意味はないわ。どっちにしたって。私は飛ぶ。
All hesitation left within Yua disappeared, and so, moving her foot forward, she... Oh, and then there's the gunshot. A gunshot tore through the dark night, and with a start, Yua came to her senses. Realizing where she was, she let out a frightful scream. The sheer height of where she stood immediately disoriented her, making her lose her balance. She very nearly fell, but in her desperation, she shot her hand toward the fence behind her and grabbed onto it. Because of this, she successfully managed to avoid being met with a terrible fate. The gunshot had come from the roof of the outpatient ward, leading her to look at it once more. In the circular clearing on the roof garden, she managed to spot multiple figures. There were two of them. One was on the ground, and the other stood beside them.
Bansan.
Had the detective shot someone? Or had the detective been shot by someone?
何をしてるの？どうして私と同じ痛みを味わおうとしないの？そんなの卑怯よ。ずるいわ。みやちゃん。違うわ。私はユアよ。ユアは、私。ミヤはあなた。あなたは一体、何なの？私はあなたの望んだもの。あなたは私の望んだもの。
Mia reached for her sister. Placing her hand around Yua's neck, she began to strangle her. Yua felt a strong pressure on her throat. She could no longer breathe. Damn, what if she just, like, her and Bond died around the same time? Mia was no ghost. She definitely had a body of flesh and blood, and now she was strangling Yua with it.
お願い。死んでよ。今日ぐらい、私のお願いを聞いて。いつも我慢してきたんだから。
Yua's vision grew crimson. She reached her hands out into the air in front of her, but found herself unable to grasp anything. I'm going to die. Awash with the most extreme dread. Using her whole body, Yua called upon strength she did not even know she had. She tried desperately to break free from Mia's grasp. But Mia was too strong. Yua was unable to move her even a single inch. Even Yua's thoughts were dyed crimson. It felt as though her consciousness was being coated in a layer of viscous blood. In a desperate frenzy, she shook her head so violently her glasses fell from her face. And from that point onward, to an outside observer, Yua and Mia were no longer distinguishable. It did not matter who killed whom. The result was arbitrary. If Yua died, all Mia would have to do was become Yua. If Mia died, all Yua would have to do was become Mia. Feelings of resignation steadily spread throughout Yua's heart. Before her eyes was Mia's, or possibly Yua's face, seeping with anger. Not wanting to see such a sight, she looked away. And what vaulted into her red field of vision was the shrubbery and the flowers adorning the roof garden. Oh, no way. Of course she's a gigalomaniac. Of course, yep. All the girls. I was thinking that, I'm like, at least we have one girl who's like just a normal girl. But nope. Nope. In her mind, Yua felt there was a shadow among those flowers, the likes of which she had never seen before, though perhaps it was simply an illusion. She had dropped her glasses in the struggle after all. However, no longer able to breathe and suffering from so much pain, a faint sense of peace gradually rose from within her. Despite her thoughts of simply surrendering herself and peacefully passing on, her instinctive desire not to die denied her of that peace. It made Yua extend her hand toward the desperate shadow. Her distance from the shrubbery was about 2 meters. How she was now, there was no way she'd reach it, even if she were to extend her hand. And yet, her fingertips touched something hard and cold. She then grasped it, almost completely unconsciously. The second she did so, Kusunoki Yua's consciousness, right on the verge of fading, instantly became clear, as though the haze had been dispelled from her mind. There was an invisible yet fierce impact. Her sister, rained upon by showering red lights akin to petals, was blown away. Languidly standing up as she gasped for air, Yua looked at what she was holding and instantly doubted her eyes. And she becomes a magical girl. It's funny how, like, Takumi is the main character. It seemed like all of this was leading to him, like, getting his sword and becoming a gigalomaniac and, like, having the special powers. But he's just too much of a weenie to do it. It was a sword. All the girls have it except for him. All too elegant, like the glasses worn by one. All too sharp, like the wit shown by the other. All too immaculate, all too vigorous. All too profound, its nature veiled. All too delicate, its frame easy to fracture. And so beautiful it beckoned tears from the eyes of all who laid upon it. The object now in our hands, it reminded Yua of Ayase's sword she had seen at the overpass, and of the sword that Bon had spoken of, Senna's.
今のは何？
Mia, after being blown away by the mysterious impact, had been buried in the shrubbery. As she held her head, she freed herself from it and crawled back to her feet.
あなたは何をしたの？私はミヤちゃん。私やっとわかったわ。どうしてここまで一生懸命あなたの死の真相を調べていたのか。私を殺そうとしたの？私はまた殺されるところだったの？また？結局私はあなたが怖かったのよ。当てつけに死なれたと思ったの。あなたがわからなかったの。あなたが死んだ理由は私のせいじゃないって証明して安心したかった。最低のお姉ちゃんね。どうして死んでくれないのよ。
She could no longer get through to her. Their two selves, once again in the beginning, had now diverged completely, never to return to one again. Mia reached to grab her once more, reminded of the pain she had experienced before. Yua's trembles of dread returned, leading her to... Except this time she actually did kill her. Well, the ghost of her, the delusion of her, whatever it is. Brandished her sword, it carved a sharp trail and then cut the ghost in half. Mia's movements came to a halt, and with a look of shock on her face, she traced the wound of gouged flesh with her hand, beginning from the left side of her torso, and ending all the way at her right shoulder. No blood sprang
ミ
forth.
ヤちゃんは2ヶ月前にそれならあなたは誰なんですか？
Countless particles, large enough to be seen by the naked eye, came flowing out from within Mia. Her body, now enveloped in bubbles, gradually collapsed to the ground as her silhouette faded and faded. It was now transforming into something else. Yua, with feelings of incredulity, saw what it was. After a moment's wait, a man with an impressively large physique appeared in Mia's place. Oh! Okay. So that's what those things are. So they're able to turn themselves into whatever delusion they need to turn into. Interesting. He was wearing a denim shirt, jeans, and a rucksack on his back. Yua had never seen the man before. So I'm guessing these delusions can only be, like, destroyed. The guys who create these delusions can only be destroyed by D-swords?
どうしてミヤちゃんの姿にどうやって
Yua backed away in confusion, still holding her D-sword. The man was similarly bewildered. He had not likely predicted he'd been uncovered, leaving him to act in a very clearly frantic manner.
お前こそなんでまさかこのガキギガロマニアックスか聞いてないぞ
Basically, if you see a girl with a sume uniform, there's probably a 40% chance they're a gigalomaniac.
くそどうしたら
And then, ignoring gravity itself, it came flying in, its path almost horizontal. By the time the man looked behind him, it had already perforated the rucksack on his back. So, is that Ayase, maybe? Because she's at the hospital, right? And from that same rucksack, a pale flash of light surged. The man, as though he had just received an electric shock, stiffened up like a pole. His eyes shot open wide, and only a moment later, he lost consciousness, falling face first to the ground. He foamed at the mouth, and every so often his body would twitch. The object that had pierced the rucksack. Yeah, that is... That's Ayase's, right? Was a sword quite like the one Yua had obtained a moment ago, with beautiful curves adorning its every edge.
これ
Yua remembered the sword. She had seen it once before. A single presence approached her. Yua raised her head. Someone then emerged from the darkness.
何事かと思ったらこんな騒ぎになっていたのね。岸本さん。
Without a change in her expression, Ayase glanced at the sword Yua held in her
感
hands.
じる大いなる意志を。私がこの病院に居続けた意味はこういうことだったんだ。
So, like, way a while ago, with the guy from the Nozomi group, when there was the Garo Froggy, and he said, like, who would have thought that you were a gigalomaniac or something? That seemed to have happened a while ago. I was thinking, I'm like, maybe that's Yua, could be Nanami, because I'm just thinking about who are the girls who have the Garo Froggies. So, I don't know. Maybe that was like a flash forward when we saw him there with like the thing with the Garo Froggy. Maybe this is before Yua possibly gets captured. Could still be Nanami, could be someone completely different. Yua had sunk into the ground, dumbfounded. Ayase picked up the glasses that had fallen near her, crouched down in front of Yua, and peered at the girl's face. Then, with her slender fingers, she brushed Yua's hair aside and gently put her glasses back in place.
君もグラジオールの黒騎士だったのね。
And with that, Ayase gave a faint, transient smile. Alright, well, it just keeps getting crazier as we're hurtling towards the conclusion of at least the first playthrough of this. Bon, seemingly dead. It was off screen. So my rule is, if we don't see the death happen, or if we don't see confirmation of it, we can't say for sure. Maybe somehow somebody else came in with a gun and shot Sua. But yeah, definitely called it on Sua. Maybe in retrospect it was very obvious that he was not what we thought he was. I should have realized, I should have clocked it, and I kind of did, when he had the Darth Spider ringtone, and, you know, we saw the Darth Spider costume at the O Tower, or whatever it was called. But Bon might be dead. That sucks. I really like him. That whole thing with Yua and her twin sister and revealing, surprise, she's a gigalomaniac. I think we just have to assume any cute girl in this game is probably going to be a magical girl. And we're still grappling with the whole idea of us not being real, being a delusion, Takumi being the one person who is supposed to be a gigalomaniac, like the ultimate one, apparently, and he has not fully grasped it yet. Maybe that's going to happen right at the end, and he's working towards that. But yeah, a lot to take in there with Bon, the one person other than, like, I have to think too, like, what's going to happen with Momose? Like, they probably know that she is also on the trail of what's going on here, that she was working with Bon, so I figure she's probably going to get targeted. Yua is probably going to get targeted. I mean, she already kind of was. They seem to have taken her out, but now she's got Ayase to help her out and maybe help her navigate through being a gigalomaniac. But yeah, that's a lot, guys. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I imagine probably within the next few episodes we'll be able to finish the first playthrough of this and then go back and find out more about what the heck is going on in this game. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and stay tuned next week for part 19. Until then, bye. Special shoutouts to my top tier patrons: Revealing Storm, Lynn's VA, Kenju Storm, and iCognito.